What's up, everybody? Welcome to Tones Overthinks It, the show where I think too much to make up for the people who don't think at all. So last week, on June 18th, 2023, the privatized tourist submersible Titan, owned by the company Oceangate, disappeared while on a dive to the wreckage of the RMS Titanic in the North Atlantic. A search and rescue effort was mobilized in an attempt to recover the vessel and its crew. Unfortunately, 4 days later, on June 22nd, debris of the Titan would be found on the ocean floor, indicating that the vessel had imploded with the loss of all hands aboard. So in the days following the sub's disappearance and unfortunate discovery of its fate, a lot of information and reports have come out determining that it may not have actually been safe to undertake the journey it was attempting. That in fact, many of the design elements that made this sub unique from other vessels were in fact some of the very things that caused it to fail. And that the person responsible for its construction, and also the CEO of Oceangate, Stockton Rush, had seriously misplaced an abundance of overconfidence in his vessel and its capabilities to the point of negligence. And his hubris would ultimately cost him and the 4 other passengers aboard the Titan their lives. Now, given where the Titan was going, I'm pretty sure myself and many others cannot help but see the irony in this incident. Because a mere 1,600 feet away from the Titan's final resting place on the ocean floor lies the remains of a vessel that has, likely as the Titan shall be, remembered still to this day as a victim of hubris and overconfidence. Like the Titan, the RMS Titanic was being pitched as something that was revolutionary for its time, and the Titanic certainly was, meant to be the face of a new golden age of transatlantic travel in the early 20th century. A monument to human achievement as the largest, fastest, and most luxurious ocean liner ever constructed. Or as the late great Alec Guinness would once put it,
she was one of a kind. No question about it. And God himself, they said, couldn't sink her. Then in 2 hours, she was gone. And 1,500 souls with her.
Despite the fact that by today's standards it would be woefully dwarfed and outclassed by any modern cruise ship, the Titanic was, in fact, one of a kind. It was an age of invention in the early 20th century. People were eager to show off the latest technology and achieve greater things that had never been done before. Unfortunately, this led to overconfidence in the various systems and design elements of the Titanic that was supposed to prevent the vessel from sinking in the event of a collision at sea. Let's imagine 4 individuals for a moment. Individual A thinks to himself, it's okay to run the ship at full speed despite it having a small rudder that would make maneuverability difficult to avoid a collision. The ship has lookouts on hand that'll keep an eye out for any oncoming objects, and the ship has watertight compartments, so in the event of a collision, the flooding will be contained and the ship won't sink. Meanwhile, individual B is thinking to himself, it's okay that these watertight compartments don't go above the waterline and that only a maximum number of them can be breached in order to prevent a sinking. Naturally, the crew is going to be doing everything it can to avoid having a collision in the first place. Individual C is thinking to himself, well, it's okay if we don't have enough lifeboats on hand. The ship is designed not to sink, so we really only need enough to ferry people back and forth to a rescue ship that will have plenty of time to wait to arrive. Finally, individual D is thinking to himself, well, it's okay if our lookouts don't have binoculars to spot an object at relative distance for us to move the ship out of the way. The ship is unsinkable, and in worst case scenario, we have lifeboats on hand to get people off to safety. All 4 individuals believe that only one element of the ship is deficient in terms of safety, unaware that combined, every element of the ship is deficient for safety. So the end result, you have the world's fastest, safest ship, unable to avoid a collision, suffers too much damage to prevent a sinking, and had fewer than enough lifeboats to save less than half the people on board. And so there lies the Titanic over 100 years later, a reminder to us that if we so wish to push the limits of human achievement, we have to take it seriously, for if we don't, the universe seldom forgives us when we make that mistake. And that could be no further from the truth when you look at the Titan. I mean, the more I hear about this submarine, the more I cannot help but question how anyone would have even agreed to get in that thing. The Titanic sank because people were overconfident in how it was designed. But if you look at how the Titan was designed, I'm amazed anyone had any confidence in it. It was steered using a video game controller. Its ballast was made of rusty old pipes, Half the equipment on it was bought from a camping supply store. Its carbon fiber and titanium pressure hull was probably good enough to make 1 or 2 dives and then be retired, and yet was expected to make multiple dives in its lifespan. The viewport, which by the way was the access point for the sub that had to be bolted on from the outside, was rated for a safe operational depth of only 4,200 feet. The wreck of the Titanic is sitting at 3 times that depth at over 13,000. Think about that for a moment. You're looking through a window that is designed to withstand only 1,800 pounds per square inch of pressure, and you're going to take it to an environment where the pressure is 3 tons per square inch. Hearing information like this just has me baffled how the heck this sub even survived as long as it did. And while the Titanic had plenty of people around who were willing to take a look at its design and say, yeah, that should be sufficient, the Titan didn't have that luxury. Many people took a look at it. People who rode in it, people who worked on it, had little faith in this sub's ability to keep people safe at those depths. And when the people tried to bring these concerns to the CEO of Oceangate, Stockton Rush, they were ignored or even fired. Rush wasn't overconfident in the Titan, he was outright arrogant about it. This guy's attitude towards safety would horrify you, and the measures he took to circumvent regulations, even more so. Rush operated the craft in international waters, which means it was not subject to any government agency's scrutiny, which means it was never certified or approved by anyone. Why? Because Stockton Rush felt that it would take too long to have the craft certified. Living very much up to his name, he was in a hurry. He wanted to be the pioneer in this new age of extreme tourism where wealthy people would pay top dollar to go to extreme environments, and that all these regulations and the approval process was anathema to rapid innovation. I mean, this guy thought it was too much to ask to put an emergency locator beacon on the thing. And what did it do on a previous dive? It got lost for 2 hours. Talk about not taking a hint here. And yet he insisted time and again that this thing was safer and more efficient than anything that had been built before, by virtue of the fact that he was streamlining construction and reducing operating costs by having everything bought and constructed on the cheap. I'm sorry, but there are some things in this world where cutting costs is not a benefit. One need only look at the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster, where you had people meddling with the most powerful, volatile substance on the planet, and then had the gall to say that their design was superior on the basis that their nuclear fuel didn't have to be properly enriched, that they didn't need containment structures around their reactors to protect people from disaster, that they were using a positive void coefficient cooling with water, which is far more unstable than anything else in the world, because doing all that is just cheaper, which in my opinion is a load of crap. Some things are more expensive because they work, because they're the only things that can do the job. Okay, there's a film. It's a romantic comedy from 1987. It's called Moonstruck. It's starring Nicolas Cage and Cher. Do not ask me to make a video overthinking how the heck that even exists as a concept. My family's Italian. It's a film that every Italian family probably knows and probably can recite every line by heart. Again, don't ask. The point is, there's a scene in it where the actor Vincent Gardenia, who plays a plumber, and he's telling this couple who recently bought a house that a repipe will be incredibly expensive. And when they ask why, he breaks it down for them. He tells them there are 3 kinds of pipes. There's what they have, which is garbage, and clearly we can see that. Then there's bronze, which is good until something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong. And then finally he says there is copper, which is the only pipe he uses. He then ends with saying that it costs money because it saves money. Now, to be perfectly fair, this was the 80s. It was before cross-linked polyethylene, aka PEX piping, was widely used in residential homes. That didn't happen until the 90s. But regardless, at the time, copper pipes were the best. If you went with something cheaper, chances are you were going to have issues later on down the road. So again, there are situations where cutting costs do not make sense as a solution. So in conclusion, the Titanic and the Oceangate Titan both ended in disaster with an unnecessary loss of life because of the same problem. when people have a desire or a vision that outweighs their good sense, where they want to change the world to a way they find favorable, regardless of what it may cost and how it may impact others, who want to get there as fast as possible, thinking that they don't have to go through the same channels or follow all the same rules as everybody else. I originally started this channel for the purpose of discussing people like this, to try to understand why they are so determined to do things their way rather than the right way. All while thinking because they're doing things differently, that somehow makes them greater, that they are achieving something no one's ever done, when in reality, they're just causing more problems for the rest of us. Because one thing to consider, because of Stockton Rush's actions and his negligence and his eagerness to launch this new industry of tourism, this disaster is going to set that back, if not completely kill it. I mean, how eager do you think anyone is to get on board someone's homemade submarine to travel down to the wreck of the Titanic now? And that's what we see happen time and again. People take things too far, with no regard for the cost or the consequences. They just keep going full speed, deeper and deeper, placing too much undue confidence in things that are flimsy and put together by people who don't know what they're doing, where people who do take one look at it and say, that's not gonna hold up. But they don't care. All they can see is the goal, is the achievement, is the thing that makes them stand out. But in the end, all that pressure from all those poor decisions will be too much, and it will come crashing down on them like an I-beam onto an idiot. But then again, maybe I'm just overthinking it. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you like what you see here and you want to see even more in the future, please consider subscribing to my channel. Also, feel free to share your thoughts down in the comment section. I always love to read them. Till next time. Okay, let's see Chili get crushed one more time. It still cracks me up. His acting sucks.